the information that they need in their day-to-day activities. Further, we know that we are starting with you, and we'd like to ask for your favor that you hand with us. We ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Bearing in mind that we should not gloss over the funeral, we have a funeral that is going on, and I think we as members of Parliament are very much involved in that funeral. And at this point, I would just like to ask that we just observe this being the first presser we are having as members of Parliament. We have not had a presser. We would like to observe a moment of silence. Thereafter, we ask the people that are prepared to start the presser. I ask for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Who's starting? You are starting. Okay. We have different issues that occurred in the week. As you know that our pressers are structured around reflecting on different issues that occurred inside Parliament and those that may concern the members of the public, as it may be. And we will range from issues to do with the Constitution. We range with the issues to do with economy, it's the performance of the economy. We also range to do with issues that touch on social justice, as well as factors that are related to such issues. At this point in time, I would like to ask Honorable Kafwaya to start up with the issue that relates to a number of things. And I think you delve into the issues of budget, also on the issues of the elephant in the room, which is Bill 7, sorry. I'm used to Bill 10, and other related issues. Honorable Kafwaya, sir.
Thank you so much, Honorable Fube. I would like to appreciate the opportunity offered to me. Let me recognize senior members of the party and also senior members in the House and all members of Parliament who are here today. I also recognize the media, as I do our viewers. I have a few things to talk about. I'd like to start by recognizing that yesterday I saw on social media that the President appointed a Deputy Auditor General. I'd like to congratulate the appointee. I recall that 2 deputies there were removed from office and sent to holding position. Eventually, one of them died. Clara Mbazima died. So I don't know which position was filled by the President. I'm not very sure. But one Deputy Auditor General has been appointed to fill one of those positions. Congratulations to the appointee. What I'm still wondering is why the Auditor General cannot be appointed. I'm wondering whether the President has failed to identify talent which can be able to perform the functions of Auditor General. From the time Dr. Dix Jembe was forced to resign, up to now, there has been no Auditor General in the country. And you can't keep the audit office without the Auditor General. I think the President should find a way of appointing the Auditor General. He has kept that office without the head for too long. And by the way, the man who is there does not even qualify to act, because according to the law, you cannot act in a position in which you don't qualify. So we don't want to belabor the fact that the acting Auditor General does not qualify, to act. This morning, as I listened to Her Honor the Vice President responding to some of the questions that were put to her by some members, I was very surprised to observe that UPND think that they have made things easier for people. They think that meal is cheap now. You know, they think that the cost of Forex is now cheap. In fact, even the president commented on that, where he even said if he wasn't sitting as president, he would be praising UPND. I'm very surprised that the UPND government think that the tax system of this country is now fair. You won't believe it. They think it is fair. This is when UPND is trying to tax the poor people more than ever. Remember how we complained about, you know, the mobile money taxation. UPND went ahead and introduced that tax. Right now, they are saying even those who sell cigarettes will be taxed more. Those people who sell, you know, beer will be taxed more. Those people, it's just chaotic. Now, they are focusing on just the poor people. And remember, this government is a government that only focuses on damaging poor people. If you recall what they did to mobile money, you know, traders, you know, their booths were just destroyed without notice, and the government has moved on. Now they are going back to, it's chaotic. But with all that, the UPND government think that they have done so well, you know. Today, so I got a little frustrated, and I decided to remind them that you are the same government who fed people with imported meal which had aflatoxins, basically poisoned meal. But the UPND considers that as you know, food security. They are the same ones who exported safe maize, which they found in sheds. UPND considers that as, you know, food security. So the more they look at their success, you know, the more I get surprised. When I look at what the president has been commissioning, all of the work is for the late President Edgar Lungu. Recently, he commissioned the dam in Kafulafuta. 84% of the work was done by President Edgar Lungu. But when you listen to the ministers, the way they talk, you are really left to wonder, you know, what type of people these ones are. The power plant, which was you know, launched, no mention of Edgar Lungu whatsoever. I wonder what the honoring of the dead body is about. But let me remind you, my friends, that this is the same UPND government which facilitated $2.8 billion worth of illicit financial flows. This is the same government which facilitated 60 billion kwacha worth of illicit financial flows. They facilitated 34.5 billion kwacha worth of illicit financial flows. Now, when you look at these numbers, of corruption, of theft, can UPND on any day have any morality to stand up and start misleading Zambian people that they have worked? This is why you see they are so hell-bent on destroying the Patriotic Front. The Vice President today considered the illegal actions of the Registrar of Society as opposition. She said what is happening is politics. Now, you take politics into the Registrar of Societies. This is how UPND has sunk this country. It is the Vice President who said that today, that no, what is happening at Registrar of Societies is actually politics. How can you take politics into civil service? It's very unfortunate. Maybe it is politics that is happening at Auditor General. That's what we cannot have a legal, a constitutional Auditor General. Look, over 400 people are still in holding position. Some of them, like Kraram Bazima, are even dying because they can't stand getting paid without rendering a service to the people. You have kept these people for all this long without deploying them, and you are calling that performance. You are even saying there's this thing which has come, which they are saying kwenyu, as if there's something they are trying to promote. It's very, very unfortunate when I look at where this country is going. Look at the supplementary budget. Today, the minister is pushing the approval of a supplementary budget. Okay? 44% of the income is actually borrowing. He wants to borrow, and is not borrowing concessional. He's borrowing at 13%. And this is against the agreement they have with the IMF. The only thing is he's going to borrow in Zambia, and he's going to borrow in dollars. You understand? Which is equivalent to a Eurobond. Because as you know, the Eurobond is any amount borrowed. For our perspective in Zambia, it's any amount, any borrowing done in a currency other than the kwacha. That's a Eurobond. So this guy is going to borrow at 13%. And this particular borrowing will have no grace period. He borrows today, next year he starts paying. Then you will be saying, PF left a lot of debt. This is why we can't plan properly. This is why we can even call Parliament when there are news to come and approve a borrowing. It's very, very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. The concessions that they have agreed with IMF is borrow concessional, borrow long, and then get grace periods, and make sure that this borrowing is with very minimal, very minimal, interest. But 13%, none of the PF Eurobonds carried such a high percentage. None. All the 3 Eurobonds are lower than this. But this is a government which was saying, no, if we get to AISA, there will be no borrowing whatsoever. So for me, I have to tell you, my friends, that I'm very disappointed with the UPND government as far as what they think, how they think they have performed is concerned. I'll speak a little about the specific numbers on the income side of their supplementary budget. But let me just say that I'm also disappointed with the President of the Republic of Zambia for the manner in which he has treated Bill 7. Here is why I am disappointed with him. When he realized that his government had not sufficiently consulted, he directed his minister to defer the bill. See, he realized his government had not consulted, so that was a flawed bill. It was a bill not born out of consensus from the Zambian people. He directed, go and defer the bill. And the minister, I would imagine, intimated with the National Assembly to defer the bill. And the bill, as I speak now, stands deferred. That means within a period of 6 months, that bill will come back. But listen, when this same bill was declared unconstitutional by the Constitutional Court, the president has not directed his minister to go and withdraw. Because now it's not only the case of failure on the part of government to consult. It is now unconstitutional. The bill now, we are told, is illegal, it is unconstitutional, it can't proceed, but the president has remained mute. He has failed to direct his minister to go and withdraw the bill. For that, I'm very, very disappointed. I think the president should not be swinging into action on smaller issues and leaving big issues, because the Constitution is the biggest document on in this land. And what is declared unconstitutional, the president should swing into action. He must have, more velocity than when dealing with the other broken laws, which are subsidiary laws. The president swore to defend the Constitution. He didn't even swear to defend, these other acts of Parliament and bylaws and so on. He swore to defend the Constitution. Why is he failing to tell his minister to swing into action and withdraw this bill because it is now illegal. UPND wants to bring back the bill to the floor of the House, even when they know that there is no consultation that they are going to do, even though they know that the bill is an illegal bill and constitutional bill. I urge the president to swing into action. Let him demonstrate the same level in fact, a higher level of agency to ensure that this bill is completely out of the parliamentary process. But outside of the president motivating the minister to withdraw the bill, I think the National Assembly of Zambia should not tolerate illegal things. It's very unfortunate. In the executive, they are doing illegal things every day. They have an illegal auditor, they have illegal audit reports, they are now sitting with a bill which is illegal, which they can't withdraw. Now, if the National Assembly tolerate, because people would be thinking, when a matter goes to the National Assembly is going to act. There is no action there. The bill still stands deferred, and the select committee is in place. They are just hibernating. So I think that there is need for the Zambian people to know that these matters, as important as they are, government, both in the executive and the National Assembly, think that to sustain an illegal transaction is normal. I wouldn't be part of that. Let me just briefly talk about how the Minister of Finance wishes to raise revenue to fund the supplementary budget. If you observed, the minister is saying he wants a supplementary budget of 33.6 billion kwacha. Now, when you add all the heads which he has supplemented, the total you are going to get is 25 billion. So 25 billion and 33.6 billion are not the same. So this supplementary budget is not balancing. This is a government document from the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance has brought to the National Assembly a budget which is not balancing, just basically looking at the left and the right, or the debit and the credit. Now, this government is capable of bringing such documents, even for enactment. But you see, the enactment of this will follow a simple majority. So I can assure you, UPND is going to go ahead and enact a budget which is not balancing. That is not the only problem. On the income side, on the revenue side, the minister has got a number there, which is saying savings declared across heads of expenditure, 10.99 billion kwacha. Okay? This is just ubufi, just cheating people, I can assure you, misleading the nation. Because when you pass a budget, you actually come up with a law called an Appropriation Act. And that Appropriation Act will run from 1st January of a relevant year to 31st December of that particular year. So we have an Appropriation Act for 2025, which is the budget for 2025. This amount is sitting in that law. This amount of 10.99 billion is sitting in that law. But what Minister of Finance through Dr. Msokotwane is doing is to come and enact it again, because this process will end up with a Supplementary Appropriation Act. So we're going to have two pieces of legislation: the original Appropriation Act and the Supplementary Act, both of them having a figure of 10.99 billion kwacha. How can you have a budget like that? Now, in accounting, we used to call this double counting. But you double count for what? Now, this can confirm to you that it can justify why the sum of all the supplemented heads is not reaching 33 billion. It is just 25 billion. It can tell you how UPNG wants to cheat people. But some of us were trained for this. When I look at this, I summarize, I cast. When I did that, I found that this side of, or the debit side of the supplementary budget is not the same as the credit side. But Dr. Msokotwani will go ahead, can assure you, because we are dealing with a shameless UPND. One more thing I just want to talk about, additional revenues. Now, out of this 33 billion, he's saying 10.9 billion, these are declared savings I was talking about. If you have things which should not exist, it doesn't even a schedule of this figure, it doesn't have. You know, to tabulate what are those heads where you have declared the saving before the year comes to an end. It doesn't have. The next one is financing by borrowing, 14.8 billion kwacha. I talked about how he's going to borrow commercial, 13%, 7 years, and no grace period, which is non-concessional, in contravention with their own agreement with IMF. The last item I want to talk about is the additional revenues through these, where are those bills? I had the bills. Just misplaced them or lost them. So the minister wants to increase taxes for cigarettes, for beer, for betting, and the drinks. You know, the sugar drinks, where the drinks with sugar, Coca-Colas, Mojos, and so on and so forth. So for us, we are saying, you are being unfair to small people, because you can't increase taxation for those who are just drinking beer because they are jobless and they want to forget about some of the things. Yesterday I had a conversation somewhere and somebody said, no, when they increase the cost of beer, people will stop drinking beer. So you, Kafwaya, you want people to continue drinking beer. My response to that colleague of mine was that, look, chakolwa ni chakolwa. What you do to a drunkard is you have to rehabilitate them. You have to help them to come out of that habit of overdrinking. But I also know people who just drink a bit for socialization. And I even declared that for me, I don't drink. I don't even smoke. So I have no personal interest. But I have an interest in people who are doing business, who are doing small businesses in these areas. You can't increase their taxation at the time when you are stealing. Look at the illicit financial flows I was talking about. You can't increase taxation for these small people at a time when you are stealing not only through these illicit financial flows, but also stealing, natural resources like mukula, lithium, sujilite. You can't do that. Gold and everything that you can get revenue from, you steal as a government. You are stealing now, even through an airport. Not ordinary Kurioko to where we go and are checking in. No, presidential pavilion. God. Presidential pavilion Kurioko some designated place. For it's very unfortunate. Designation, but for worship with a dead body. You can't do that. You can't. So what I'm saying is, you have to make sure that you focus on things that can help people and reduce the pain of the Zambian people, particularly those who are defenseless, the vulnerable poor people. Reduce their pain. You can't be increasing their pain like this. Taxes. Otherwise, I would like to end here and perhaps hope that UPND will listen.
Thank you so much, Honorable Kafwaya, for that mouthful assault on different issues. I hope that when I call it assault, you will not be cited for seditious, because it's not an assault on anyone, but you are just trying to tabulate issues. At this moment, allow me to call upon Honorable Tsanga, who, among other things, concentrate much on concentrate much on the issue of Bill 7 and the surrounding factors, meaning where are we and what is the way forward and many other factors.
I also thank the press. We are always obliged to have you in our presence as we take this platform of communicating matters of grave concern in the nation to the public for them to know where we are moving. As introduced, I'm going to speak mainly about the Constitution, but I want to preface my discussion by just making an observation on what happened in the House day before yesterday, on the occasion where the Speaker chose to spite the members of the opposition the time they walked out to go and canvass when the issue of leader of opposition was brought to our attention, and it received a very negative response when, in keeping with the Constitution, she ought to have assisted guiding the House on what was going to happen. If the public was following, the Patriotic Front had communicated previously to the Speaker that we had agreed in compliance with Article 74(2) of the Republican Constitution to have Mr. Miles Sampa take the role of leader of opposition. That decision was arrived at as part of the overall reorganization that we were making in the party, as we ready ourselves to prepare the party as the leading party in Tonse Alliance to go to the 2026 elections. And despite that communication, the presiding officers have not effected the changes on the leader of opposition, choosing unilaterally to keep Mr. Chavinga, as leader of opposition. The Patriotic Front is on record as having said right from the beginning that Mr. Chavinga's ascendancy to the office of leader of opposition, even if it was done in connivance with Mr. Miles Sampa, was not compliant with the Constitution, because Article 74(2) clearly states that the party with the second largest number of members of Parliament in Parliament should be the one to designate through a process a person they would like to be leader of the opposition. At the time that we had arrived in this Parliament, Mr. Brian Mundubile was leader of opposition. Mr. Stephen Kampiongo was the whip for the opposition. They were unceremoniously removed because of a scheme that was hatched and that was even supported by the UPND, which scuttled the leadership of the Patriotic Front on the 23rd of October 2023. Despite that happening, we thought we could ameliorate. As we have been dating the state and explaining our position, we have tried every legal means of trying to reorganize the political party, but we have not received any responses from the judicature. So we felt that as people who are reasonable, we felt that as people that can speak to each other, we can reorganize or we can address our grievances without having recourse to the court. And this is why the settlement between the Miles Sampa faction, if you call it a faction, although I don't even call it a faction myself, and the main group of the Patriotic Front agreed that we are people that reason. We are people that think we can resolve these matters, and we resolved them. Why we are still sitting with Mr. Chavinga as leader of opposition, it is only the presiding officers and the UPND that know. Because under the Constitution, it is the PF which is supposed to designate to the presiding officers who the leader of the opposition is. And shockingly, when we were walking out of the House just to go and canvass, which is in accordance with parliamentary procedure, you could hear the Speaker show her or exhibit her open bias towards the Patriotic Front by saying that the confusion that reigns in your party is the one you are trying to bring to Parliament. Now, for us, it didn't surprise us, because we know who are the authors of confusion the Patriotic Front are. The nation still remembers very vividly what happened on the 23rd of October 2023, which resulted in Mr. Chavinga sitting in the office where he's sitting as leader of opposition. But what is even very critical is that from the time Mr. Chavinga was made so-called leader of opposition, he has never provided leadership for the opposition in the Parliament. And this is what has contributed to the chaotic outing that we've been seeing in this Parliament. So our attempt was trying to realign Parliament so that we can continue to provide credible checks and balances. But lo and behold, you saw what the Speaker did to members of Parliament. Even when we went outside just to go and canvass and agree the position, and we said, out of respect, we're going to go back in the House so that we can continue the deliberations of the day. We walked into that House, the Speaker, still aching from the rage that he had against us, asked us all to leave for the day, and we left. It was very surprising, and to call what was happening that time as confusion is confusion itself, because the real confusion, if the public saw, is what happened when the UPND brought their newly elected member of Parliament for Lumezi to Parliament. They, in disregard of decorum, in disregard of parliamentary procedures, they came here clad in uniforms, UPND uniform, to present their candidate or to present their new member of Parliament into the House. What was even more shocking was that the so-called leader of opposition, Mr. Chavinga, was found in the group of those people that brought their MP. How on earth can you have, in an opposition, in a country which is multi-party, in a country where the leader of opposition, who's supposed to be leading the opposition members of Parliament, is going to patronize the political party that is in power, even giving the dramas money, and when they are relating, and somebody wants to think that that is order, and that what the Patriotic Front is trying to do in the House is confusion. It tells a very big story about where we are sitting as a nation, as a multi-party state system. Our quest, even as we continue now, is to remind the presiding officer, the speakers themselves, that there's a provision of Article 74(2) in the Constitution that they need to comply with. We want to be civil, we want to be reasonable, we want to be leaders, and we want to demonstrate that we are fully compliant with the Constitution. We have made an earnest plea to the Speaker that insofar as we are concerned, Mr. Miles Sampa has now been elected by these members of Parliament of the Patriotic Front as leader of opposition. We need to be able to know that the Speaker is going to read the Constitution correctly and comply with, with what is required of them to comply with. But see, this is what causes confusion in the House when people choose not to be consistent. Okay, at the time when Mr. Munduvire was removed as leader of the opposition, the same issue arose. The matter was in court. We even wrote to the Speaker ourselves and said, please, we have taken this matter to court. Do not change leaders of opposition. All members of Parliament signed a petition to the Speaker asking her to maintain Mr. Munduvire as leader of opposition in Parliament. The Speaker was she did not agree. She was unrelentless. She decided she is going to change, even when the matter at that time was in court. This time, if you heard her response was that no, she can never deal with the matter of leader of opposition in Parliament because the matter of Mr. Chavinga is in court. Now, this is very surprising, because if the public has been following what is happening in court, Mr. Chavinga has been attempting to join the proceedings in which Mr. Sampa has been taken to court on leading the Patriotic Front. The High Court made a decision that Mr. Chavinga has not demonstrated any locus standi in the matter and was not joined to the proceedings. Just how this Speaker thinks that that matter is in court, for me, it beats the reasoning of every reasonable person. Because even if she wanted to be consistent, even when the matter is in court, like Mr. Munduvire's case was in court, she should have just complied with Article 74(2) of the Constitution. But see, we have said this, that from the time that the UPND came into power, the law and even the Constitution are not imperatives to this group. The law is a convenience. They will comply with it just when it suits them. If it does not suit them, they won't comply with it. They know exactly what is going to happen to this Parliament if a leader of opposition who has approval of members of the opposition is allowed to sit in the seat of leader of opposition. It means we are going to be effective. It means we're going to provide proper and credible checks and balances, as opposed to what is going on right now. That the leader of opposition, when you expect him to be leading a Parliament, he is outside Parliament. He comes in Parliament, reads 1, 2 speeches, walks out of Parliament without providing leadership in the House. So we think that we still have room to the Speaker, we still have room to the Deputy Speakers for us to ensure that we comply fully with what is provided for in the Constitution insofar as the leader of opposition in Parliament is concerned. The case of having to kick us out of Parliament when we simply went to canvass is again something that has caused us grave concern. Because if the country remembers, there were many, many times when the UPND when they were in opposition, they were walking out of the House. Every time they were dissatisfied, they would walk out of the House, go and canvass and come back. Sometimes they would just go out of the House to protest the presence in the House of the Republican president at that time, Dr. Edgar Chagolungu. Whenever he came into the House, they walked out of that House. An issue was raised by the PF that time when they were in power, that they should be sanctioned for disrespecting the president. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Dr. Patrick McBean, rendered a ruling saying walking out of Parliament is a means of protest that members of Parliament are entitled to when they're dissatisfied with what is going on. This, if we are going to have a Parliament that is consistent, this is what we expected Speaker Nelly Muti to have done when we returned to Parliament, because we simply had gone out to go and canvass and came back. But for her, because like I said, the law is a convenience in the UPND government, by extension the presiding officers, she found it fit to keep us out of the House, even when we demonstrated that we had just gone out to go and canvass. But this is how people who choose not to be consistent end up running down institutions such as what the National Assembly itself is. On the issue of Bill 7, you see, I made a statement at the time that the UPND suggested that they were going to amend the Constitution. I made a statement that the moral right to run and manage the affairs of a country rises and falls with the character of leadership that you provide. That is the time when they had not even, edged their signature on Bill 10. Just when it was suggested that the Constitution was going to be subject to some amendment, we had concern at that time because we knew that the fundamental facet of amending the Constitution had not been complied with by the UPND. We told them that if you saw what we had done with Bill 10, our consultation was so wide-ranging that all stakeholders had participated in that process, especially the UPND itself. The PF has not participated in the authoring of Bill 7. In fact, when they first approached us, we said the timeline is gone. The window for amending a constitution is gone. You will not have sufficient stakeholder consultation. But see, they kept saying, oh, the mama jealousy. You just don't understand the Constitution. We reminded them that when you came into power, you never suggested to the nation that you're going to amend the Constitution. Where is the idea of amending the Constitution coming from? And why are you in such a hurry to amend this Constitution? But they basically felt that we were stepping on their way and they were going to do it anyway. They were relentless. Other stakeholders spoke to them and told them, you can't do it, there's just no time. They then started lining up stakeholders who supported their bid. And you started hearing compromise NGOs beginning to speak. Oh, no, we just need to do this. Even NGOCC was convinced at one time that this is a proper procedure for us to amend the Constitution. Okay? Unfortunately, when it became clear, when the matter was challenged in court by Honorable Munia Zulu and Celestine Mukandira versus the Attorney General, when it became clear that they had been caught wrong-footed, a decision was made, which again was unconstitutional. The president, I don't know from which powers under the Constitution, I don't know from, I've read Article 90, 91, 92, and 93. I don't see anywhere where the Constitution gives power to the president to guide the Minister of Finance, like Honorable Kafoya said, to defer a bill which is on the floor of the House. Because in the legislative process, the president is the final mark. He's the one who will come and append his signature to this bill. So if this parliament was allowed to debate freely on Bill 7, we should never have heard of a suggestion that the president has guided the Minister of Justice to defer the bill. But even more importantly, the timing itself was very, very inconveniencing. Because the night we saw a write-up from State House that the minister has been guided to withdraw the bill, the following day, we had a very decisive decision by the Constitutional Court declaring the whole process which resulted in the enactment or in the drafting of Bill 10 to be null and void. It was unconstitutional. And the Constitutional Court, to the shock of the whole nation, cited various provisions of the Constitution that have been violated by the process that has been put in place by the European government in its attempt to amend this Constitution. We, as a patriotic front, feel extremely vindicated that the issues we'd raised about, the inappropriateness of the procedure that was going to be conceived by the UPND to amend this Constitution are the ones that came to the fore when the matter was being deliberated upon in the Constitutional Court and when the Constitutional Court made a decision. The majority decided everything that is happening with Bill 10 is unconstitutional. Now, I can forgive the president when he can suggest that this Bill 10 can be cleaned up by some kind of process, because now we are hearing a suggestion that there's going to be a technical committee that's going to be put in place to try and polish up the Constitution. No, sir. The Constitutional Court has told you that what you have put in place is a nullity. A nullity does not exist. You cannot bring it into existence by trying to polish it up. That's not the correct thing to do. You have fundamentally violated the Constitution. What you now need to do is to introduce, like the Constitutional Court guided, a completely different process which is much more stakeholder-based. And this answers to what the imperatives have always been when enacting the Constitution. We have had various constitutional review processes in this country. One thing that has been very consistent with all these is that we have deemed the process as people-owned. If you heard what the Patriotic Front did in 2011, they introduced the term people-driven constitution, because the idea of writing a constitution is not supposed to be the preserve of politicians. I have said it before here, and I can repeat it, that a politician like we are now seeing is the most dangerous individual when it comes to the constitutional making process, because they are politicians. The only thing they must provide to the process is political will, i.e. to assure the people that whatever you're going to put in the drafts, whatever you're going to say needs to be included in the amendment, we are going to enact it when it comes to Parliament. That is the political will that politicians are supposed to provide to the Constitution. But when you allow politicians to drive the process, you get to a stage where they begin to argue with you. First, they begin to scream in your ears that, no, we're just looking for non-controversial provisions. We're going to amend them. Or, no, we're just going to, harvest low-hanging fruits. And we've said it many times here, there can never be low-hanging fruits. And if you see with what is happening now, NGOCC, the church, credible NGOs, they've come back and said, look, this thing looks evil. The whole of this draft looks evil. And can somebody now convince me that the non-controversial provisions? If I cite one example, where they tell you that, no, if Mr. Tsanga was elected under the Patriotic Front, and if he dies, we should avoid a by-election. Just go back and pick up PPND who ranked number 2 and take them to Parliament and say this is a new member of Parliament. Where is democracy in those kind of processes? You even want to water down the qualification of a secretary to the cabinet and say for you to be secretary to the cabinet, you can only be there if you were a civil servant for 5 years. You will be presiding over civil servants who have served the government for 30 years, for 20 years. Just because somebody likes you in the political process, they pick you and take you in the highest office. That office is a very, very complex office. And God shows you examples. Look at how my brother Kango has been handling the issue of Edgar Lungu and the people. That tells you that you cannot just put an individual in that office and say this one is going to work. In fact, I must say here, without fear of contradiction, that Mr. Kango has tried very hard to make that office function. And the reason is simply because he is ably qualified, he has experience. Even in the midst of great frustrations, he's tried as much as possible to make sure that he functions in that office. But that should be an example to you Zambians who are following the debate on Bill 10, that somebody can come and convince you today that low-hanging fruits and non-controversial provisions include reducing the experience that a Secretary to Cabinet must have, and have anybody, for lack of a better term, any Jim and Jack appointed and given a position of Secretary to the Cabinet. We need to become serious with how we want to handle, the affairs of our Constitution. Coming back to the Attorney General, the Constitutional Court has made a determinate decision about this process. They have rubbished it, for lack of a better term. They have said it doesn't need to go on. They have advised government to abandon, not defer, abandon this process because it itself is unconstitutional. When you begin to hear the Attorney General suggesting that, no, we're just going to polish up Bill 10, it tells you that we have a problem of a capacity in that office. By extension, you see, this has made the Attorney General cause the President to breach the Constitution, because the constitutional obligation that the President carries on himself, provided for in Articles 90, Articles 91, 92, and 93 of the Constitution, are very onerous, that he needs an Attorney General of impeccable character to be advising them on what to do. If I was this Attorney General, I would simply have agreed and I would have respected the decision of the Constitutional Court, and I would have advised my cabinet and the President by extension to abandon the whole process and concentrate on several other areas in this country that are in need of attention. This country is in problems. If you have a country that cannot even agree on how to bury a former president, it tells you what kind of problems the country have. And for you to think that somebody can tell you can't do the Constitution, then you go back and say, oh, we're just going to polish it. It shows you lack of seriousness in leadership. Can we get serious? We need to start this journey from a standpoint of seriousness. The Constitution is not the only problem that in fact, we don't even have a problem with the Constitution. Believe it or not, we don't. Because Act number 2 of 2016 is a very effective statute. If we are a very serious nation, we can go to the next election using Act number 2. This is the same Constitution that put this president in power. This is the same Constitution that put this government in power. Why are they having a problem with it now? Why do they want to shut the door to this Constitution that helped them to get into power and redesign a Constitution in such a way that it guarantees their retention of power in 2026? We cannot be doing this if we're a serious nation. So my advice to the Attorney General, you are the leader of the bar. Every lawyer looks up to you on how you are going to respond to a decision that is so categorical in the instruction it gives you and government on what to do. The easiest thing you can do is pack your muscle and go and sit with this cabinet and tell them, gentlemen, ladies, we've been guided. Madam Minister of Justice, the Constitutional Court has spoken. And you see, I spoke here once before. I said, we are so lucky in this country. We now have what is called a constitutional democracy. The only thing that we must do is to ensure that we pack people in the Constitutional Court who think, who can advise us, because all of us as a nation have resolved that those people, I think they are 13 or 11, are the only ones who are going to be telling us whether what we are doing is constitutional or not. And this time around, they have actually told us, or they've told this government, that your Bill 10 is unconstitutional. It violates the principle and the fundamental rules that are contained in the current Constitution. So you cannot use it as a vehicle to amend this Constitution. The advice to the Attorney General is to insist that you go and advise Cabinet to abandon this process and replace it with one that complies with the Constitution, but also one that takes on board all the stakeholders who are supposed to have a say in constitutional making. I'm so grateful for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Tsanga, for that elaborate input that you have given to the media. And I think we are doing fine so far on a lot of these national issues. Allow me at this point to ask Honorable Gordon Mwila to contribute what he has prepared for today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Honorable Kuben, and let me also write on the protocols already observed in recognizing the speakers for this afternoon press address. I will limit my discussion this afternoon to the supplementary budget that was introduced to Parliament by the Minister of Finance, and we have been discussing that supplementary budget. You may know that this time the supplementary budget comes with an amount of 33.5 billion kwacha. That is extra money which the Minister of Finance is asking in order to enable government to implement the programs that they have lined up. Now, the 33.5 billion kwacha that the Minister has presented as supplementary budget, if you compare it with the substantive budget that we're implementing now, which is 217 billion, so that tells you that it's come with a supplementary budget standing at 15% of the substantive budget. Now, I think that, first of all, in this country, going by how this government has been handling the issue of coming with a supplementary budget, I think that there is need for coming up with a law that guides, limits how much that supplementary budget should be. Because going through this supplementary budget, I have seen a lot of questions bordering on the budget credibility and fiscal discipline. Because there are certain things that have been introduced in this budget, which then gives you a wonder. It takes you to wonder, where were the people when they were planning for the budget for 2025? Because they have introduced certain lines with colossal amounts, which generally, if people were serious at the time of preparing the main budget, should not be coming under these huge amounts in the supplementary budget. So I think that there may be need to come up with a law from Parliament which will limit how much a supplementary budget should be in terms of percentage of the existing budget. Now, Let me just show you certain examples of why I'm actually doubting the credibility and the fiscal discipline in this government. In the supplementary budget, there are certain lines that you worry and wonder why all of a sudden we are having, in some instances, requests for supplementary budgets which are far and beyond the figures that were approved in the original budget. The Ministry of Technology and Science have brought a supplementary budget request of 194 million kwacha for ICT infrastructure. The original line in that budget program is at 14 million kwacha. That is what we approved for this substantive budget. Now, 6 months down the line, the ministry comes and requests for 194 million, 13 times more than what was originally approved. So where were the people? What has happened suddenly that you can require 13 times more than you had already planned? So that's why I'm saying credibility of this budget and fiscal discipline is a big problem. Because if you don't give a cap on how much supplementary budget should be, people will be coming up with such colossal sums of money. Where were they when the planning was happening? Not to have remembered that you need smart villages. I didn't even understand what smart villages the minister meant that will take this money to. Are we having internet connectivity in our villages now? Our schools running in the villages up to date with internet and ICT lessons? I really wonder. Now that explanation came up. If you look at the Fiscal program under Minister of Agriculture, the ministry is requesting an additional 5.8 billion kwacha, in addition to the 9.3, which is sitting in the substantive budget. This is more than 50%, almost 60% of the original budget. So the question you ask yourself is, what happened? Where we have not had the drought to warrant extra investment in the Fiscal program. And if you listen to the explanation that we want to front load the e-vouchers, we are now paying this year for the agricultural inputs that were obtained last year. That raises a lot of queries. At the time of planning, this government knows, when we are preparing the national budget, the government knows how many people have been enrolled on the Fiscal program. And that will give you a calculation of how much you should provide. Now today, to be told that in fact the inputs that were obtained for the 2024-2025 agricultural season were not paid for, but they were being paid for in this year. And then we also want to pay everything in this year. Look, where have been the people? Because even this year, we know how many people are going to benefit under the Fiscal program. So to come and say we want 5.6 billion, 5.8 billion kwacha, it just shows you that there's lack of seriousness in terms of budgeting. And that is why the government is now abusing this idea of a supplementary budget, because they know that even if they relax in planning, they will still have an opportunity to come with a supplementary budget and put it at whatever amount, which really is not taking us anywhere as a government. My colleague, Honorable Kafuaya, talked about how this budget is going to be funded. Already, we are half year through the implementation of the original 2025 budget, and the minister comes to Parliament and says we have made savings of 10.9 billion kwacha. Who declares victory? Even in a soccer match, at half time, you start saying we have won the match. Who declares victory halfway through the 90-minute soccer match? These savings of 10.9, which the minister has said we have made savings, already last week, or is it this week, from the Minister of Local Government, the PS was just releasing money and urging all local authorities to spend money within 48 hours or something. There is still program implementation going on across the country. How do you declare half the year that we have made these savings? All of a sudden, this government has become so efficient that they have actually carried out the programs or the procurements and implementation. They are even able to tell that this program we are done, we have saved this much. This program we have done, we have saved this much. How efficient this government has become all of a sudden. Where is the breakdown? Which program areas, which ministries, which heads of the budget have produced these savings? It just tells you that the calculation and the funding of all this the supplementary budget is shrouded in secrecy. The next thing I want to talk about in terms of funding this budget is the borrowing. which this government is going to borrow 14.5, net borrowing added to the domestic debt, 14.5 billion kwacha, and they have made a breakdown. 4 billion is going to come from the securities, interests, the bonds and treasury bills. 10 plus billion kwacha is going to come from the commercial banks. Now, for me, the surprise, first of all, is that they are going to borrow at 13%, which is too high. Secondly, they are going to borrow US dollars locally. Now, this is the government which even has laws. We have laws here that traders cannot even be quoting prices in US dollars. Now, how does the government be the first one to even borrow locally in US dollars? Where will this money go? Are they borrowing US dollars so that they can pay US dollar debts, or is to fund the budget? The expenditure is in kwacha. And if you allow the government to, its own statutory instruments and laws not to transact locally in US dollars, but it is the first one now that is going to be borrowing locally in US dollars, what does that do? It puts a strain on the local currency. Suppliers and traders in the private sector borrow US dollars because they have invoices and debts to pay or imports to pay for outside of this country. But this is not the case with the government. Why can't they borrow in kwacha? Because they are funding the budget which is based in kwacha, and the programs they're implementing are in kwacha. So when we see the kwacha tumbling, when we see pressure on the kwacha, it is because of this kind of acts where the government itself is in the forefront, going to the local market but borrowing in dollars. Please stop it. Get your kwachas and fund the budget in kwacha. We are straining our local currency. Further, the borrowing this government is going to do. Now, I just want to link this to how we have lost leadership in the mining sector. We have seen gold reserves all over this country. The only thing I saw was to say we will now be sending military personnel to guard where we find these dollar reserves, these gold reserves. This is the same gold which has made countries transform. It's the same gold that has made rich men and women where in the jurisdictions where it has been found. But for us, instead of talking prosperity, instead of talking about how much the government has raised out of this, we are just talking about people dying, illegal miners being crushed, being hauled up and dying. We are losing lives instead of raising money. If the government was serious in terms of managing all these precious minerals, gold and others, we should not struggle to fund a supplementary budget of 33.5 billion. This is the money that we can raise locally if we taxed the mines properly, if we gathered and managed our gold reserves and other precious minerals properly. We should not struggle to raise this money. So basically, we have a problem in terms of fiscal discipline, and hence seeing all these supplementary budgets with very questionable figures. Like, people were not there when the main budget was being prepared, and they're just introduced midway, and they bring in lines that really do not make a lot of sense when you compare to the initial amounts that were budgeted for. So, of course, it's a supplementary budget that is very difficult to support, but it goes through simple majority in Parliament, and everyone there will just be saying, yeah, to pass it. But it is just encouraging fiscal indiscipline. It is not supporting budget credibility. And even the people that support the budget, external support, must look carefully how this process is being done. So I think with those words, I would say thank you very much, and I hand back to the moderator.
Thank you so much. We'll have Honorable Mundubire to speak last, then I'll try to sum up on take-home notes. Honorable Mundubire, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Mulenga Fube, Member of Parliament for Chilubi. Twatotera bafube muposeshe kwa bantu kuchava kuma swamp MKA. I acknowledge the speakers that have spoken before me. These are members of a Patriotic Front. Honorable Mutotwe Kafuaya, Member of Parliament for Lunte. Honorable George Chisanga Honorable Member for Lukasha, and Honorable Gordon Muira from Mufulira, and not forgetting the Fourth Estate. Yes, I think a lot has been said by my colleagues. I will comment on the fate of Bill 7. The starting point is that Bill 7 is dead. Bill 7 cannot be resurrected. It is dead. It died the moment the Constitutional Court pronounced its judgment on Bill 7. So as we speak now, there is no legal document that is in existence called Bill 7. The process of coming up with that particular bill and the content and everything related and associated to it is now a nullity. So there is nothing called Bill 7. It's unfortunate that the Attorney General has deliberately decided to mislead those people that he's charged to advise and give them an impression that Bill 7 can be revived. It cannot be revived. The Constitutional Court was very clear in guiding the executive on how to proceed. Now, colleagues, if you remember, it was on this floor, it was here that we advised government. We advised government that constitution making under constitutional democracy and under new constitutionalism involved dialogue, transparency, accountability, legal process, among other things. There is a difference between a constitution and constitutionalism. A constitution is basically the black text. When you talk about constitutionalism, you look at the culture, the customs that surround the process of coming up with a constitution. And that's exactly what we're advising government. Government decided to ignore the advice and guidance that we gave on how to come up with a constitution amendment bill. The spirit of the Constitution is very clear. It talks about broad participation, public participation, among others, dialogue. The spirit of the Constitution is such that you must elicit trust. You must reach consensus so that all the stakeholders, majority stakeholders, should agree with you. So we went through on the floor of the House, we came here and advised government that one, when you want to come up with a constitution, there are basics. There are certain imperatives that you'll have to observe. For instance, to agree that you're going to amend the constitution, that agreement should come out of a stakeholders meeting. You must sit as stakeholders, as we're seated here, and agree that we're going to amend the constitution. So when that is done, we also have to go further and agree on the extent of amendment. How far do we want to go in amending the constitution? When you have agreed on the extent, then you come up with a design. How are we going to do what we have agreed? From that design will come the roadmap. So when the roadmap has been agreed upon, I want to show you how many steps the Minister of Justice skipped. It was after the design and you come up with a roadmap. Remember, the roadmap is also a product of consensus. You must agree with the stakeholders, this is the roadmap. Now, to ensure that the executive does not depart from that particular roadmap, that's when now stakeholders demand that you legislate the process. Meaning the roadmap now comes to Parliament after the ministerial statement. It now comes in form of a bill. It's debated on the floor of the House and enacted as law. That way, all the stakeholders remain confident that you follow. All these steps were skipped by the UPND. We are therefore not surprised that the Concord found this particular process and that particular bill to be unconstitutional and indeed a nullity. So way forward, our advice to government is that first of all, they must assess the time that is remaining in between now and the next election. And number two, they should facilitate stakeholders' meetings. Before they even talk about a team of experts, Because if they get a team of experts, it means that team of experts will be looking at Bill 7. Like we've said, Bill 7 is dead. So those experts can't come in now because they'll be looking at a bill that is dead. So the starting point is to get stakeholders together, and that stakeholders meeting can be facilitated by government, but chaired by the church or maybe the Law Association of Zambia. It's from that meeting now that all other agreements can be made. We can't prescribe, not even here at this press briefing. All we can recommend is that a stakeholders meeting be called. So that stakeholders look at the time that is remaining, the work that has to be done, and if at all it's feasible that a consultative constitution-making process can be commenced now and concluded before the next election. It's that consultative meeting that will come with that conclusion. So, Attorney General, as has been guided by my colleagues, we want to call upon you to give sound advice to the executive. I know that it may not be easy, given the frustrations, sometimes that people are getting, from the executive. Even professionals now are scared to give proper advice. But as a trained lawyer myself, I think we are trained to deal with very difficult situations. The Attorney General, as head of the Zambian Bar, I think has enough experience and can really pack his muscle and be able to face the executive and just tell them the truth on the import of the judgment that has come from the Constitutional Court. You can't continue playing ping pong, even when the judgment is clear. Even lay people are reading that judgment and they can interpret it. So when we hear the Attorney General saying it's an act of lawlessness for people to talk about abandoning Bill 7. No. What is lawlessness is Attorney General and his people advising others that Bill 7 can be revived. That is what is lawlessness. Not those that are talking about Bill 7 to be a dead bill at that. Yeah, so to my brother, President Hakainde Hichilema, I remember that in the past, when he was condemning Bill 10, he made reference to State Counsel John Sangwa. He said, look, constitutional lawyer John Sangwa has spoken against Bill 10. Why don't you abandon it? He referred to Chapter 1 Foundation. He referred to the churches, among others. And all these people that I've mentioned have condemned Bill 7, or indeed the attempt to amend the Constitution through Constitution Amendment Bill number 7. So President Hakainde Hichilema, it's the same people that you referred to as authorities previously, and I think that you can listen to their advice now. These are Zambians, men and women, that have stood firm on the side of the people to advise on constitutional matters. So I want to believe that even President Hakainde Hichilema, who previously relied on these experts to guide on constitution making, can still rely on them. I want to draw a distinction because when you talk about consultation, even before we bring in the Concord judgment, when the Minister of Justice was going around the country to make consultations, there was already a bill which was gazetted. And she called whatever she was doing consultation. Now the question was, what was the product going to be out of those consultations? For instance, the chiefs in Wapula made their submissions. The Minister of Wapula asked the minister, why haven't you included those submissions that were given by the chiefs in this particular bill? Because there was some misunderstanding of the process. And I think that the minister did not understand what consultations mean when it comes to constitution making. The consultations that you make under this process are consultations before you come up with the bill itself. Even the consultations referred to under Article 79 are not consultations after the bill has been assembled. These are consultations before the bill is actually crafted. So when Minister Kasune was going around the country, I think it was a waste of time because the bill was already in place. So what she was doing, those were not consultations. She was actually trying to convince people. So let's draw a distinction between consultation, convincing, and or informing. So those trips, those tours the minister undertook were basically to inform other people on what they were trying to do and cannot therefore be referred to as consultation. The consultations that are referred to here, as recommended by the Constitutional Court, is where from the very beginning, because remember that the breach, as cited in the Concord judgment, was at the initiation of this particular process. So what was in violation was the initiation, the very beginning, the commencement of this particular process. So this is why we are saying that nothing can be salvaged from that process, or indeed a Constitutional Amendment Bill number 7. So our position, like I stated at the beginning, is that Bill 7 is dead, and government needs to go back to the drawing board, working with CSOs and the churches. Maybe a stakeholders conference can be assembled, where stakeholders will now assess to say, if we started now, if we started the processes now, is there enough time to go around the country, engage the people of Zambia and all key stakeholders, and be able to marshal support and start a consultative process that will result in a constitutional amendment bill before being presented to Parliament and enacted into law before the next election. As a constitutional legal scholar myself, if you ask me, the time that is left may not be sufficient, but we'll leave it up to that consultative meeting, if ever it's going to take place, to see whether in the time that is remaining, something can be done that would result in a constitutional amendment bill and the Constitution itself. As Comrade Sangat had said, I think most of the Zambians, including the journalists here, are slowly becoming constitutional lawyers. Clearly, but I must warn you, if you are going to be a good constitutional lawyer, don't follow the process under Bill 7, because that can mislead you completely. So try to read the Constitutional Amendment, try to read the Concord judgment, which can guide you. So all these terms we are learning now of low-hanging fruits, please don't follow that.
Non-contentious.
Non-contentious, don't follow that. That can just mislead you. Yeah, so I think that was a part on the on Bill 7. Comrade Chisanga made reference to the comments by the presiding officer over the confusion in our party. I want to confirm, first of all, as the national chairperson for TONSE and Parliamentary Affairs, that there is no confusion in PF and there is no confusion under TONSE, in TONSE rather. So the people that were talking about confusion in PF, if I were to make a comment, should actually make an assessment. The confusion is actually in their camp. It's in their party. That confusion is in their party. So they were just communicating what is in their minds. It's themselves and their party that is busy at registrar of societies, changing names every other day, every other time, to what suits them. So they can't put it on us that there's confusion in our party. So those that say there's confusion in our party should be reminded that it is in their party where that confusion is. They want to bring confusion in the PF. There's no confusion in the PF. The PF from the beginning, there may have been challenges. You have seen that we've come together. We are sitting with Comrade Mao Sampa. We were just speaking to him a little while. He may find us before we leave. We have all agreed, and we're working together. Vice President Lubinda is acting president of the party. Honorable Nakachinda is the Secretary General of the party. And I think so far so good. They've been able to hold the party together even after the demise of the party president, President Edgar Chagolungu. So people should not come and introduce confusion. But what is important is Article 74 of our Constitution that provides for how a leader of opposition is appointed or indeed elected. If you look at the import of that particular provision, you will realize that that responsibility is left to the party, the largest opposition political party in Parliament. And the reason is simple, because if the leader of opposition is elected or appointed by the party itself, members of Parliament and other leaders, it becomes easy for that particular leader of opposition to command authority over the members of parliament as he coordinates the activities. You can't have an individual who is only supported by presiding officers to be a leader of opposition. It's unheard of. The party in power, being the UPND, presiding officers, are the ones that now choose a leader of opposition. That's a position, that's where we are today. Comrade Chavinga, Robert Chavinga, is only supported by presiding officers and the UPND. He's not supported by any PF members, as it were. He does not command any authority over PF MPs. Now, if that is not confusion, then what is confusion? I've mentioned the people who are facilitating that confusion. Now, the same people want to turn and put it on us that we're the ones that are creating that confusion. The people are recognizing a person who has no authority whatsoever. Comrade Robert Chavinga cannot even command a single MP out of that parliament. He has no authority. He has no legitimacy, as it were. Now, the people that are supporting that leader of opposition are the same ones saying there's confusion in your party. Can you believe that? No, it's unbelievable. Yes. Because if the new normal, as my brother is saying, you know, is taking what is normal to be abnormal and vice versa, then that's where we are. Okay? Or maybe we can call it that we're in a state of entropy, where, you know, the disorderly manner in which things occur in order. This is what we have. What is okay? No, because Parliament starts at 14 and it ends at some point, but with a lot of disorder. So it's a disorderly manner in which things occur in order. Yeah, so anyway, the point we're making is on the leader of opposition. We want to make a demand. We want to make a demand to the presiding officers of this parliament. We cannot continue to pretend. Chavinga is not a leader of opposition. He cannot be the leader of opposition. He commands no authority whatsoever to command that parliament. Let's give it up to the member that we have chosen for ourselves. The new leader of opposition is Miles Waliasampa. Let Miles Waliasampa take his seat and begin to command that parliament. Madam Speaker, you will see that the activities in that parliament, the discipline in that parliament, the decorum and order will be achieved. As it is now, members are just there as individuals. Yes. Yes. I mean, Madam Speaker, we're struggling for quorum every other time because the people that you identify as leaders of opposition cannot even go outside to whip members to come back to the House. Members are just in that parliament out of their own discipline. There is no order. So we cannot continue that way.
It's not always there. How does he whip anyway?
Because that's one thing. That's one thing.
But he gets paid.
Yeah, but what is of concern, especially we're talking about supplementary budget, we know that even this parliament is heavily funded. It's heavily funded for one reason, because as members of parliament, we're supposed to function. We're supposed to function as members of parliament. What's the point of parliament receiving so much money from the budget, and yet deliberately presiding officers and the government in power have designed it in such a way that efforts of genuine members of parliament are frustrated? So we're not functioning as a parliament.
We can sit there.
If people took an analysis of what's happening in that parliament, leader of opposition, you're welcome. We're just talking about you. That's the leader of opposition. Chavinga is not. Mao Sampa is. You're welcome, leader of opposition. Thank you. Yeah, so if Chavinga was the leader of opposition, he'd have been here. He's never been here because he's not the leader of opposition. Yeah. So Comrade Mao Sampa had some busy schedules elsewhere. Because he's leader of opposition, he has come to make sure that he's part of the team. Now, the call I was making on Madam Nelly Muti, we can't continue to pretend. Robert Chavinga is not the leader of opposition. He has never been the leader of opposition. So, and for that reason, we cannot continue to get taxpayers' money just for members to show up, and that money is wasted. Parliament is not functioning. This parliament is not functioning. So Zambians must demand that this parliament should start functioning. And we in the opposition, as the largest opposition political party, we demand that our leader of opposition takes his seat so that he begins to command his authority over the members, to guide them over the debates, as it were. Today we're having members being suspended merely for questioning who is receiving commission for contracting loans. And the member is suspended. Other members have been asking. Members have been asking to say, for instance, you've got $10 dual carriageway. Okay, that deal with the concessionaire, we had contractors working on that particular site. There were no consultants maybe for over 6-7 months. The contractor was on his own. Who was measuring the materials, the quality of materials and the works? Because that is taxpayers' money. The money that is being used there is taxpayers' money. Now, when our members ask, because there's no leader of opposition, members are suspended. Our members are now, they fear to ask difficult questions. I want the Zambians to know that most of the completed sections on the dual carriageway were actually completed without any form of supervision. Today, you know that even a 2-kilometer road, there's a consultant on that particular site. First of all, they must assess the quality of material, starting from the sand, the quarry, the cement, and everything else, and measure the works before you're paid. But on that big project, which somebody will run for 23 years, there was no consultant. There was no one to supervise those works. If our members ask, if our members wonder whether that particular decision was taken because somebody was receiving a commission, members are taken to jail. Some of our members are in prison today for asking us difficult questions. Why? Because there's no leader of opposition that could be able to guide and follow up on these very serious matters. Zambians are losing money on these projects. 23 years, that project will be under the concessionaire. Zambians are paying colossal sums of money, yet the project is not being supervised. Today we want to ask, the transfer of toll gates, the SI that transferred toll gates to the concessionaire even before they constructed the road, we were informed on the floor of the House that, as a matter of fact, that money from these toll gates will be used to, for maintenance works on those roads. But there are no maintenance works on those roads. There's actual construction on those roads. So this person is receiving money for something that they didn't invest, and they're not applying it for the reason that they advanced. So leader of opposition is not in his seat to guide members to ask these very important questions. The result is that the non-functioning of parliament, Zambians are losing colossal sums of money through this parliament because it's just there. And people are getting away with murder. People are getting away with theft. They're getting away with corruption. Had we been properly constituted with a leader of opposition in his seat, most of the activities on the dual carriageway would not have gone unchecked. Today, the consultants, the contractors are walking out with colossal sums of money for carrying out works without any supervision, carrying out works whose quality is not checked, as it were. When members ask about the appetite to contract loans, Binwell was not wrong, Honorable Mpundu. He simply said there's $2.5 billion which was repatriated to the Panama by a non-mining house without board approval, something that amounted to theft. Directors of that mining house were arrested, they were detained, and the matter was to proceed to court. The Minister of Finance came and discontinued that particular case without any explanation. We asked the question, what motivated that decision? Before he could get any explanation, a minority shareholder from ZCCM-IH wrote an article which was seen by everybody, including Ministry of Finance, that there was a mining house that owed ZRA $1 billion. Ministry of Finance advised them to only pay $23 million. So Honorable Bino Mpundu was justified. He was saying, look, we are borrowing money where we're even paying arrangement fees, but there is money which we're just giving away. His question was, is it that somebody is paying arrangement fees or being paid arrangement fees for letting this money go just like that? These are questions which should be responded to. But instead, my dear brother is asked to leave the House. Yeah, so I think the point is made. We've made a demand to Madam Speaker. Honorable Mao Sampa, I think as members of Parliament, we want to ensure that come next week we make this demand, that you take your seat and we begin to function as a normal Parliament. We are the opposition. Yes. We can't allow Parliament to impose a member of Parliament upon us. So what they are calling disorderly conduct is something that is engineered and designed by themselves. Because if Parliament was to function as it is designed, we won't have some of the problems that we're facing today. Yeah, so I think to conclude my submission, ladies and gentlemen, I was responding to one of the journalists. I can see my dear lady seated here. She was asking me, saying that the UPND is saying there is no opposition. They're very confident of winning the 2026 because in their view, there is no opposition. My response to our dear lady was that they should not worry about the opposition. Opposition political parties are merely vehicles through which citizens, express their views, as it were, or to which they belong as clubs to be able to advance, certain interests, as it were. So the real opposition, this is for the UPND, the real opposition are actually the Zambian people. And if you look at the number of people that are against you as a government, it's very clear that you're going to lose 2026. Or maybe we can flip the question. How does the UPND honestly think they can win 2026? Maybe that's the question. How do they think they can win 2026? Because I'll give you a few examples. The Zambian people who are the real opposition for the UPND, they remember a scandal of $100 million, which was reported on the floor of the House. And there was a letter from that particular company citing one of the officials in that government to have been soliciting for a bribe. And nothing has happened. And the G-Wagon. It was actually gray in color, blue, including the color. Even the color was in the letter. I think it was blue, a G-Wagon, a blue G-Wagon. Nothing has happened. The Zambians know about this particular transaction. My dear brother referred to some transaction at KK International Airport, at the presidential pavilion, the same section where there's supposed to have been some mass conducted when President Edgar Lungu's body arrives, that particular section. That's the same section where that gold transaction happened. The Zambian people still remember that. Okay? The Zambian people have never forgotten that this government exported maize when we needed that maize the most. In fact, this was clean maize grown here. And they imported maize which had aflatoxins. The clean maize was sold, but the maize with aflatoxin was sold and consumed.
How can you win elections?
Okay, how can you win elections when the Zambians know that? How do you expect to win elections? You sell clean maize, and then you bring in maize with aflatoxin and say you're going to win to feed your people. How can you win elections? Honestly speaking. Okay? We saw what was happening at the Ministry of Agriculture. There was so much corruption. The Auditor General failed to secure documents from the Permanent Secretary at Ministry of Agriculture, as required by law. I think he was only fired 2 years later. The Zambians still remember. Okay? The 61 containers of medicines is a story that is still alive in the minds of the Zambian people. How can you win elections? Zambians are dying because of lack of medicines. You have 61 containers that were procured under some very, very questionable procurement and dubious procurement system. The containers are there because nobody knows who can confirm the efficacy of the drugs that were in there. But over $60 million was lost. The Zambians died because they couldn't access. You get money from CDF to buy 156 ambulances from a car manufacturing company in Guardian Compound, which nobody knows about. Up to now, those vehicles are not delivered. The PS comes and says, no, I'll resign. When questions are asked, the vice president says, no, we didn't agree that he could resign now. Do you have to agree with your employee that you should fire me on such and such a day? The personal integrity. Yeah? So the Zambians remember this. Okay? The FIC report, as referred to by my honorable colleague, there was 60 billion kwacha in that FIC report, 13.5 billion kwacha, 5.8 billion kwacha, $3 billion. All these in the 3 years of the UPND. Okay, how can they win elections with all those figures? When they caught PF thieves merely for 2 billion kwacha worth of suspicious transactions. Now, them with all these figures in 3 years, okay, how can they win elections? So we have ministers, there are over 10 ministers appearing before the Anti-Corruption Commission. Up to now, those ministers are still working. You remember that our colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, former Foreign Affairs Minister, when there was an allegation against him, he was quickly cleared, and they announced that he had been cleared. So using deductive reasoning, the fact that it's been a year plus, the other 10 ministers, there's been no announcement, we can safely conclude that they've not been cleared. Because the ones who were cleared were announced in a very short space of time. A year later, these ones have not been cleared. So how can they win elections when they've got over 10 ministers in cabinet with cases before SEC and not cleared by SEC because the allegations are actually grave? How does EPND expect to win elections, honestly speaking? Okay? So we've talked about the dual carriageway. It's still there, 23 years. People are just working on their own, no consultants. Go and ask the Minister of Infrastructure. The consultant, if there is any consultant, he only went to site maybe a month, 2 months ago. Who was certifying the works that were done prior to that? Yes. Works like Masangano, that shortcut into Luansha. It's completed. Those that have gone through go and see the quality of that particular road. And yet, the UPND think they can win elections, yet the people on the Copper Belt know all that. There is the Imita Ufole program. How can you win elections with the Imita Ufole program? How do you expect to win? How can they win with the Imita Ufole program? Sugilite. 2 containers of Sugilite came, impounded, though they're nowhere to be seen. Nobody has been arrested. Okay? Lithium. Lithium was declared as sand, and when the trucks were impounded at the airport, the story has vanished. How can you win elections? They talked about Mukula trade. Trucks with fresh Mukula overturned after Monali Hills. Fresh Mukula, last year, which means it was freshly cut. And there's been no mention of what has happened. How do they expect to win elections? The story of Mupani Mai is known by even a little child going to primary school. They know what happened at Mopani. So how does the EPND expect to win elections with all these scandals? They gave in 20% in Kansanshi under the CMIH, surrendered, and instead got a 3% royalty dividend. With such decisions, how do they expect to win those elections? Yeah, so, we know about the Tazama pipeline. There was a monopoly on the usage of the pipeline. The reason why the fuel prices were high, because there was some friendly company that was using the pipeline. We are yet to know who else was sharing those commissions with. Okay? The story under the UPND then was that the PF had middlemen who were adding 3 kwacha per liter. That's why the fuel was high. And by that time, the prices were at 15 and 17 kwacha. But under the UPND, the prices went as far as 32 kwacha. So we've now realized when the usage of the Tazama pipeline was liberalized under what they call open access, the prices of fuel are now coming down. So Zambians, before you get excited with the reduction on these prices, what we want you to do is to calculate the amount of money which was lost as a result of these premiums that were added by these gentlemen in government today with their friends that were using the pipeline. So there's nothing special that has happened. By liberalizing or allowing access to others under the Tazama pipeline, what we have seen now is the prices of fuel are going down. So by the same token, that's how much money was being stolen from us by the people that were using these facilities. How can you win elections? You allow your citizens to buy fuel at double the price because a small group of people sitting behind, calling themselves powerful businessmen, are pocketing all the profits. Pure theft and corruption, how can you win? The US Embassy has helped us. They expose the corruption in the health sector. They expose the corruption in the maize procurement for the money that they gave us and so on. And lastly, colleagues, we're talking about load shedding. Honestly speaking, it doesn't matter what the UPND think. What the Zambians have been through the past 3 years with the load shedding, the small businesses and the citizens generally, I don't see them winning any election. Forget about these by-elections. Zambians are just waiting. They are waiting for the actual election you are going to see. I was giving my lady an example there that this happened in 1991. 3 months before that 31st October election, there was no sign that Kaunda could lose power. But Chiluba won by 70% within that 3 months. Why? Because the Zambians kept quiet. They realized that they had no freedom to speak freely as the situation is now. It's similar to those that were old enough. This is what we went through in 1990. So Zambians are just quiet and waiting for their day. So to answer your question, my lady, there is no way the UPND can win elections next year. Honorable Kafuaya, I thought I should just mention, even on the head of under infrastructure, the Mpika Kasama Road still remains deplorable. The Kasama Mbala Road still remains deplorable. The state is deplorable. Kawambwa Mporokoso Road, Mporokoso Nsama Kaputa, Serenje Tuta Road, Mansa Mwense Kawambwa, Chipata Lundazi, Chama Matumbo. These are roads that 10 years ago, President Sata and President Lungu had actually put contractors on these roads. The UPND came and they cancelled all the contracts. So with these contracts, with these roads remaining in that state.
And 197, those under local government.
Under local government. Yeah, but of course, it's not that other projects have not been done. I'll be wrong to say other projects have not been done. Monzeniko Road is being worked on at 3 times the price. Yes, that one is being worked on at 3 times the price. It was 370 million under the PF. The Monzeniko Road now is at 940 million kwacha. But the UPND had promised us that they were going to reduce the unit cost of making these roads. Yeah, so our plea, we are saying, we are not even shy. We speak for our people. I speak for the people of Mporokoso like he speaks for people of Lunte, speaks for people of Lukasha. And Matero. Yes, and Feiro. The Mporokoso Kawambwa Road contract was cancelled at the same time as the Monzeniko Road. At the same time as the Solwezi, Mwinilunga and Chilubi Chaba Road. So we are saying to government, in the same way that other roads that were cancelled alongside are being worked on, it will be important that you also consider roads in other parts of the country that suffered a similar fate at that time. Especially that roads that were 300 million are now at 900 million. This shows that government has got enough money to be able to fund some of these projects. So one to cry for the people of Lukasha, the people of Mporokoso, the people of Lunte, the people of Matero, the people of Feira, and the people of Chirubi, that government should be considerate and also look at projects in these areas. I submit. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I know that Honorable Mundubiro was supposed to speak at trust, and this man called the leader of the opposition with white beards, I'm sure he should have some words to say. We can't speak for him, especially on the matter which concerns Article 74, because some of the factors that are surrounding that controversy, which has just been a confusion from Parliament itself. He understands them better. So I think due to that factor, I want to give him time so that he can also talk about these factors, since he was also involved in those matters. And I think as you all know, that he has given a particular position. And I think it's better that we hear it from his own mouth, that instead of speaking for him, especially as we stand. Honorable Mundubira has already explained that leader of the opposition, Article 74 actually tackles 2 things. There is one where you find the leader of the House, which comes from the government and appointed by the president. Article 72, Clause 2, is the preserve of the biggest opposition party in Parliament, and they choose. Parliament is just supposed to receive a name and impose a leader of the opposition. Currently, we are operating in a very abnormal manner, where the leader of the opposition has not been endorsed by any of us, and it has been imposed on us just for convenience purposes, and much of it is fear of the opposition called PF. So, at this moment, I think I would like to ask Honorable Mao Sampa, who is also the leader of the opposition, whom we chose to speak to the issues that are surrounding that. And I think if he has 1 or 2 issues that has happened within this week that he needs to speak about, you're welcome to do that.
Thank you, colleagues and brothers. I'll be very brief in the interest of time, and I believe my colleagues have covered nearly everything. I'll declare interest on the issue of leader of opposition because I'm an interested party, and my brother, Honorable Mundubile, has ably covered that matter. But I just want to pick up where he left when you asked him that the UPND are saying they have no opposition. No, they are saying that it is an indication that they are scared. You only complain about a rival if they are scaring you. They know that they are a one-term government. And that's why they are playing desperado. That's why they were trying to use the constitution to force the Zambians. If that constitution had gone through, and we thank the Constitutional Court for declaring it illegal, if it had gone through, then HH and UPND would have been Wamuyaya, worse than KK. They would have stayed forever indeed. But that's what is in their mind. You hear them saying, we are here until 2099. That's what they were discussing. That was only going to happen if they managed to change the constitution. But we're going to fight it in this parliament. But even beyond that, the Constitutional Court has made a ruling declaring everything illegal. And we thank lawyer Celestine Mkandila, lawyer Joseph Chirwa, and indeed Munia Zulu. He's the one who took that matter to the Constitutional Court. They went and bullied and got the Lumezi seat on the day that we were meant to bury our President Edgar Lungu in South Africa. May he so rest in peace. Imagine, coincidentally, that was the day they were busy taking Munia's seat there. But as God may have it, they've jailed him, taken his seat, but he also removed the carpet on them, on the Constitutional Court. So even while he's in jail, he's still striking them, and they will never delete Munia Zulu, and he will be part of removing them. This government of UPND and HH, they will make a record in Zambia as a one-term government. You know the way, following the Narumangonomics, increasing in order to reduce. UNIP was in power 27 years, MMD 20 years, PF 2 terms 10 years. It only means even them reducing. They've been only in power for 5 years, and they know. That's why they are panicking. That's why straightforward matters like change of leader of opposition, they're stopping it. When we were in power, when there was President President Edgar Lungu, they never interfered with the leader of opposition. They used to swap between Honorable Jack Mwimbu and Honorable Gary Nkombo. They swap. Nobody would question as long as they instruct. And we used to implement. Them, they say, oh, there's a matter in court. No, there's no matter in court. There's no order stopping the speaker implementing. You only respond to an order. There's nothing like that. And there's political parties always have internal wrangles. It's not the job of the speaker to say, you are in court. Even UPND, I'm sure they have court cases. But it's none of the business of the speaker. She's supposed to obey instruction from the party, as said by Honorable Mundubile. But also just to rubber stamp that they are a one-term government. The statistics don't lie. It started with Botswana. They were very arrogant. President Magwese Masisi was very arrogant, dancing all the time, had a lot of cash. And he was going around also singing Kwenyu, Kwenyu. The only way you know people are about to go is when they become arrogant. Although in arrogance, if we came after 10 years, MMD after 20 years, UNIP after 27, then 3 years, Kwenyu, 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 Kwenyu. And yet what they are doing, we can count load shedding, Kwenyu. Instead of reducing, load shedding is increasing, Kwenyu. Hunger is increasing, Kwenyu. So I was giving you Botswana, the way Botswana president with their arrogance lost, the opposition united. And they were saying, okay, if HH is going, who's going to take over? It shouldn't be their worries. The same way they beat us. People were just at the time, because we had cadres and all that, they were just not voting for us and voting to them. It's the same way they will do. They will not vote for them. Whatever will do this side, they will come and offload all the votes to the opposition. So they should not worry. Those are internal matters. So Botswana, they lost all the seats. They went with their Kwenyu excitement. and my colleague Boko has taken over in Botswana. Next one term is Malawi. They are going to election in September. Now we are one term. Whatever mdala wa Eastern Sungu chakwa America kuchira na Biden. You know what under the accent. So the man is saying we can't just eat accent. So now Malawi in one term you see in September. And you know whatever happens in the region, we are not in isolation. Then after Malawi, Kenya na kona na one term. Ruto aishilemo next year there will be election. Kudia it's foregone conclusion. Ekufumena wedi one term. WANTEM, one term. If you want to be popular in Kenya, just go there and say one term. You'll be lifted high. So after Kenya, after Malawi up Achimwene, the president who's there is going one term. Next, you think it will be where? Zambia are going to election next year. It will be quite new here. The Zambian people who remove this government is one term. That's why they are panicking. Let me, as I conclude in the interest of time, let me come to one matter that is of public interest. I saw it today. The gold that has been found in Mufumbwe and Kasempa, even in Pika. These guys, the UPND government, you know gold was put in Zambia for Zambians. Poor rural people have been suffering. Suddenly in Kasempa and Mufumbwe, they find the gold. Instead of facilitating and buying from them or helping them to dig the gold, they are going there. I saw a video that was disheartening today. They were whipping them. This is not a farm. Zambia is not a home where you whip citizens like children. What was their crime? Because they were digging the gold. Who's God? I was almost going to say, God Yanyok. You know, that gold is given to Zambians by God, by all of us for Zambians. What we must do is facilitate those people, help them how they can dig deeper. In South Africa, the rural people like that, if they are the owners, there is black empowerment. They should be the one to own that mine. If there is a Muzungu who wants to pump in money, they should accept him and pump in money. Maybe give him like a 10%. Not now, the foreigners are getting 100% everything. We have more money there. That matters in court, so I won't touch it. So I'm appealing to this government to leave those gold miners and not whip them like their children. Even those people who are whipping those miners, this government should go and arrest them. It's illegal. They have rights, and they should not be whipped. Not even our children do we whip these days. Now, adults with families whipping them like children. So that's unacceptable. Finally, in the interest of time, I want to touch on a matter that I raised in Parliament today on Francis Kapwepwe, on why me. I raised it in Parliament as an urgent matter of importance. Why me, Francis Kapwepwe, hate him or love him, for whatever reason. He's a Zambian, he's entitled to rights. I'll raise it here because the speaker curtailed me. I was directing this question to the Home Affairs Minister. Then she said, no, you go and report the matter to the police. My question to the Home Affairs Minister, Jack Mwimbi, was then and is now, where is why me? Where is Francis Kapwepwe? There are reports, valid reports, indicating that he was abducted by the Zambian police and also that he's no longer alive, that somehow he's been killed. I don't know whether he was physically killed or died under torture. That's the question I was posing to the Home Affairs Minister. That's his role. This is our role, to speak for people who don't have a voice. The relatives of Kapwepwe, they are in the village of Waimi. They can't speak, so we are asking on their behalf. What did Madam Speaker say? No, you go and report the matter to the police. Why? Why should I report to the police? This is the house we discuss. They should find he's a Zambian, and the Minister of Home Affairs, his job is to take care of all Zambians, so-called criminals included. So we want to know what has happened to him. Can he deny or not deny, verify? Is Waimi alive or is he dead? Has he been killed? Was it accidental? Was it deliberate? He must say. It's his job to do that for every Zambian. Would pose this question to every Zambian that dies mysteriously. especially if rumored to have died at the hands of the police. This is a funso that only the government should answer. Alikuti why me? Alikuisa why me? Ulikuli why me? Amutwambile badala. Where is he? It's not a question of was he insulting or is he liked. No, anybody, whatever offenses he was committing, or any other Zambian, even if they commit offense, will still ask if it's rumored, but they are killed by the police. The Home Affairs Minister should deny or agree and tell us where is why me. We have some version which will not disclose. It's not a closed country. We hear these things and we just want them to tell us if he's dead or alive. And if he's dead, who killed him? Is it the police? And why? And what has happened to the people that killed him? The police are not allowed to kill anybody. It's even a bigger capital crime. Thank you very much, Chair. That was my submission.
Thank you so much. Maybe just to wrap up on the take-home points, I think there was a supplementary budget which has been condemned because its integrity is not standing well with the Zambians and the interest of Zambia, as it may be. And you find that deliberately certain figures like the 10.9 billion, which has been appropriated twice or will be appropriated twice, is not sitting well on that particular supplementary budget. There was also an issue of the Auditor General, which I think you, Honorable Kafaya, Honorable Kafaya talked about. And looking at that, we are also talking about the reports that are coming from there. What is the credibility? Are they tailored? Because we are talking about a person who is forbidden by Article 252 of the Constitution, but is still sitting there as the Auditor General. Then there was an issue of the leader of the opposition, Troy Pushachinch Kosere, because we are the opposition. And I think with the coming of Honorable Mao Sampa, who has publicly said, I have joined my friends. And they are my friends. What is the problem with the speaker and the people that are behind this particular thing? And I think there's no need for us to even start saying this thing is in the none. Because even this thing is not only covered by the Constitution, it's also covered by our standing orders of how the leader of the opposition is supposed to help the running of Parliament. The standing orders are there. But we have seen that the so-called leader of the opposition is largely absent from Parliament, and we don't even know, yes, what he does. And that is a serious question. And I think this question, Zambian people have to get interested, that Zambia is a Mount Party. As we know, it reverted back to Mount Party after the amendment of Article 4 by Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. And we're a Mount Party. We should not have a text where we have a situation where we are just Mount Party in the mouth, and in action we are not. I think there was also emphasis on Bill 7, the evil Bill 7. They call the Bill 10 evil. The evil of Bill 7, which in this case has not even followed any grain of how a constitution is supposed to be made. Constitutional lawyers here have told us that you cannot make a constitution without following the current constitution. We have Article 8, which talks about the constitutionalism, democracy, morality, ethics, and many other factors. And Article 7 is Article 8, sorry, is a compass. Further, Article 8 is qualified by Article 9, which says, Article 9, Clause 1, which says that the Article 8, the values, the national values, are to apply only one interpreting the very Constitution, and it refers to the 2016 amended Constitution. It further says enactment and interpretation of laws, meaning that it's a compass which is supposed to be used by when we are enacting laws and when we are interpreting laws. Then further it says that development and implementation of state policy. So in short, that particular route that was taken never followed any of those. Ninshibela niba champion league because further, Article 5 of the Constitution says the powers that are not bestowed on you, whether you are an individual, institution, or state organ, you can't use them. Number 7 and babika proposals now we are consulting, and I think this also goes to the same that Honorable Mundubire talked about that Attorney General. That Attorney General is now behaving like the IG, who is carrying our rights in the pocket. The Attorney General even talks about it's illegal, it's unlawful. The Attorney General should read our standing orders from 103 to 121 and how we actually carry out. This is backed also by Article 77, which says Parliament should make its own laws. Maybe just for information, this also tackles and that thing which they took to a committee which is not even sitting, the select committee, is only supposed to be there for 20 days. And after 20 days, it should collapse if it's not taken back to Parliament. But we have in between a judgment that has said that was anti-good governance, it's unconstitutional, and as attached to what I've already read, meaning this is bad, and it's bad sitting, because we govern on behalf of the people. We are only stewards. And if someone wants to take it like, let's govern Kafamu and something like that, it is not permitted. I think the group also talked about mismanagement of our natural resources, and which even the Honorable Maus, like he was here, has talked about. The group that is here, the incoming government that is here, which is PF, and that they have to get rightly. And me, when I say incoming government, I mean it. Yes. When the incoming government had put in, when they were in power, they had put in Zamgod, which was supposed to manage and bring sanity, because we discovered, even when they are talking about exploration and all that, we only knew already that Muzamba Mariba God. And there are millions of books that are there from counter time to start. No, this is the first time that this government has done exploration. No one. To discover copper. From the time of Cicero Rhodes, from 1906 to Arishibe Palapel and Stop Kilobuntung, to Asavi Kendra Mamuli exploration. And we have discovered different what? Even me, I know that even in Mporokoso, where Honorable comes from, there are minerals, and among them tin and many other. I read that from a book, a mineral book of 1987. But today we are being told that the champions, they are the first people to explore. We want to acquire. Then we talk about the issue of confusion, as it may be. Il y a confusion, no, it's a confusion in your party. For me, to alanda to allow manakapi, patch to collect mistakes to a pangide, muto warpatawi, tawitika. Number one, would let Chawingo Kuya Mubika Murika 119, Ukutabe acting it, Daniman is Vamas more much traffic. Ngamundu more much traffic. Meaning that we have in art texture, Wabi Kremenan Chavinga, Ukum forcing America 119, that got up a conference na Chawinga, that Tungana Ponankwe, Masala and that Alamu. Mulikapu 19. I want to read that way. So, politically, we don't rongana with him. So, when we look at this, we are opposition. So, when we're looking at that, I think it's important that let us respect our laws. That's why they are not even trusted with the Constitution. They are busy mutilating Societies Act and many other acts. How do we, have such a situation? The question of winning or not winning 2026, let us not even cheat ourselves. We have been around enough. And we even when you see a soaked lion, then you mistake that lion for a cat. And then you see this is a cat because it has been soaked. No. A lion can simply shake off the water. and then it goes back to its own original state. So those who are cheating themselves, if they are men enough and women enough, let them allow rallies throughout the country, and you will see how we are going to turn this 360 against them. Zambians are also communing against them somewhere, and the conus of Zambians are many, and the sufferings of Zambians are not. Even when we have under election fever, we have got desperate measures where they want to reduce artificially meal, and then they want to reduce artificially the increment of fuel, which they increase on their own. At Nabata reduce, diesel was at 15 kwacha, and the petrol was at 17 kwacha. They are still within the range which they increased. Whatever reasons that made them increase that one, the economy is cockeyed. The inflation rate is high. Zambians are suffering. That's a reality. So for anyone to ukuyipompa kwamba kulanda bedroom mwako atakawe na my elections, muchenjele sana olo musunshile. Katulamba mama campaign. So don't cheat yourself. If you know what Kishabantu, no, that's how the environment should be. No. When that 90 days is declared, elections can even be won in 30 days, for your information. So don't think that the environment you have managed to suppress is the one which will continue. Woofy. Maybe in summarizing, I also want to tell you what he talked about. Every Zambian is important. Whether that Zambian is a criminal or not, even criminals have got rights. And in any case, the capital punishment, or what we used to be referred to as death sentence, has been outlawed. So there is no shortcut. If indeed there's an allegation that possibly state agents were involved in eliminating why me, please let us know. We have the right to know. And the government can inform us that government didn't have a law to play in his elimination if a is around or not. They too much for the capital punishment here offside, here shortcut, and we just stay. It's a life for Zambia. Yes, we may not have agreed with what he was saying. If a is not alive, please let us be informed. And if that is the case, then government should own up, and it will be another negative quenu over this one. And I think there's need that we become sober in the manner we tackle these factors, not where we're always sensitive to issues. Even when people say, no, handling fee chirishan, no arrangement fee chirishan. Arrangement fee, ngatamuri corruption, why are you supposed to get annoyed? Because it's normal. Na mtampa kama loan kuma banki kula handling fee na arrangement fee, and we understand it. No, by arrangement fee, them annoy. Why? If there's nothing finished about it, it's annoying you. So, balanda tutamuli samfota tupakusala. Ichi kurufe chakula ndati. Mwila iwepa ati na mu inama elections. Mwipunda peno chitaila ingila. And even when you are tailoring with that defunct ECZ, which is confusing elections, don't think that ECZ can handle people when they have already voted and they know what they have voted. Abantu nga balanda chati kuyabeberenga na muya mukaya. And nothing will stop. Don't even cheat yourself that no, we'll be protected by ECZ by what? If Zambians vote against you, you will pack and go. Mukaiko mkulima kwa mafamu yenu na madiro ya muibire ndalama mukai mkushiwa ushako. Na ifatu kese mikata. Mwakata sana abantu ufi. Mkwai kwena pari karoke no pokachopo ningaperela. And if we have any other questions from the media, you are welcome to ask questions on clarifications.